Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hello and welcome to Authors on Mission, the podcast dedicated to uncovering the strategies and insights from expert authors who've achieved remarkable success. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer here at Authors on Mission. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Robert Wolfe, author of the powerful memoir, Not a Real Enemy. In this gripping book, Robert documents his father's extraordinary journey surviving Nazi persecution and communist oppression in Hungary. It isn't a Holocaust memoir, it's a multi-generational saga of courage, resilience, and the unwavering pursuit of freedom against the odds. Robert has dedicated himself to preserving this often overlooked chapter of Holocaust history, speaking to audiences across the country about his family's remarkable story. And today we're going to talk about his family's narrative and also about the process of transforming deeply personal history into a book that's being celebrated as one of the most compelling accounts of its era. So Robert, thank you so much for joining us on the Authors on Mission podcast. I'm really excited to dive into your father's story and about your process of bringing it to the readers worldwide. Welcome to our show.
Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate you having me on this beautiful Sunday morning. Thank you so much. It's an honor.
Of course, yeah, it's a pleasure to speak to you, and especially because you have such a powerful and important story to share. So yeah, I would love to just get started and talk a little bit about how this book came to be. I learned that you grew up hearing a lot of these stories from your parents. So, at what point did you decide that these stories needed to be in a book? What kind of sparked that inspiration?
Well, truthfully, so the first half of my life, I didn't really think much about the Holocaust. My mom and dad educated about the history and Holocaust and a myriad other things. They were very, very well-rounded, very well-educated people. They were also into travel and history, like I said, education, the arts, the sciences, theater, opera. So a little bit of the history of the book. My mom and dad wrote his autobiography in the 70s, and they wrote the stories as though they had happened the previous day. They were clear and crisp. You could smell the smells, you could taste the food, you could see the way the table was set, you could feel the fear. So they did it as an autobiography in the 70s, and the book goes from the end of World War I all the way to the end of the Hungarian Revolution in 56. And my dad and mom covered it all, including the history. And they went literally from paper and pencil to typewriter to computer to a disc. I probably read the manuscript once, maybe about 30 years ago, and didn't think too much of it at the time. Maybe I remembered his first escape. He had four escapes out of 20 miracles in the book. So I didn't think much of it at the time. So flash forward 1997, my dad passed away. Unfortunately, 2016, my mom passed away. So now the story's on a disc, and a historian friend handed me the disc when my mom passed away. And it was my dad's, his journey, like his memoir, his biography, autobiography, however you want to, I mix those up. But anyway, she says, you got to read this, you got to look at this. And I didn't think much of it at the time. So it took another year to take care of my mom's affairs. Then I retired for a year. Then 2018, never burn your bridges. An old partner of mine said, I'm a radiologist, I've just retired. And he said, would you work with us part-time Wednesdays and Thursdays, reading x-rays and ultrasound? So I went back to work, and that brought me to the book. Actually, the book sort of, the disc kind of summoned me, if that makes sense. I mean, it sort of called out to me like Superman's kryptonite is the analogy I like to use. But yeah, the disc, as a radiologist, the left screen is the patient queue and the right screen are the images. So between cases, the left screen was my dad's autobiography and the right screen was my turning it into a biography. I dictated it.
Yeah, so that's really incredible that, you not only went through all those different processes, but then you were able to bring it onto the page as well. And that's really cool, having both kind of comparing to each other on this screen. That's pretty good strategy for any writer, right? Just having multiple pages open, being able to cross-reference.
Of course, yeah, it's quicker. I mean, it's more efficient. So, with the evolution of technology, we're using voice to text all the time on our phones. And so I was doing it on my computer. And when I saw the miracles, when I saw the inspiring stories, I told myself I cannot leave this story on a disc or on a computer. I need to share this with the world. So that was the motivation behind it, with anti-Semitism in the backdrop throughout. And I realized what my dad and mom were doing. They were sharing their stories with me, but it was as though they knew that I would share the story. And don't you hate it when your parents are right? They sure were right. And also they knew that anti-Semitism would be a recurrent problem, that it never really went away, even 60, 80, 100 years ago, never mind now. So even more relevant now. So the short answer to your question is I've been doing this for 7 years now.
Understood. And that's quite a long time, but sometimes when you're working on a project, it does take a little bit of time to get it the right way.
It sure does.
So within the process of writing this book, you really did have to do a lot of research for this as well, and not only looking through your family history, but I understood you also spoke to lots of Jewish groups and multiple audiences. So, I'm wondering, what was that process like in doing the research and preparation for this?
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I mean, as you know, you write too when you help writers. So the history we had checked and rechecked. I did my own homework. Going through a lot of photos in and out of Hungary. They weren't just from Hungary, but relative Hungarian Revolution, definitely, but World War II pictures. Some were enlightening and heartwarming, and some very, very disturbing. And of course, it's still going on in the world. But so I did my homework. I did the history. My dad and mom were pretty good with the history, but a little bit of broken English because they had to learn English when they came to the United States. They were both survivors, mom and dad. And so I did that. And then, I had the book beta read by a few people because I was trying to query, and we were going to self-publish, but it wasn't. The book was sort of a boring biography. It was just, A to B to C. Dad was born, dad did this, dad did that. So with the beta reads, I got my co-author, Janice Harper, and she did a great job. She ran with she's like you. She's a co-author or a ghostwriter or a coach. She's all of the above, and she was the essential part of the equation to make this book a success. If it weren't for her, we wouldn't be here probably. But anyway, she turned the book into something special. That took her about a year. She, parallel stories, converging stories in and out of order, conversations, letters to and from home. Really, really an amazing job. And so now we're 2019, 2020. She helps me vet out agents and publishers, and we only did about 12 or 15, but she nailed it. She said, these are the ones that are probably going to publish the book, but if not, we'll self-publish. And literally bottom of the ninth, shoestring catch, we got Amsterdam Publishers, and our last one, and they ran with it. And they're a fantastic company. The genre is all they do, but a lot of books aren't just about the Holocaust. About music and art, and in our case, communism and Hungary. And it's Holocaust stories from all over the world too, not just Hungary, of course. Janice did her homework too, big time. She talked to historians, she read about the culture, the food, the expressions. And then when we had the book, we had the testimonials, wonderful testimonials, 3 professors, one of which is Michael Berenbaum, who collaborated with Steven Spielberg in the Shoah movie. So he's a known expert in Holocaust and history. And all those testimonials had they chimed in with this and that and little details. And then we had the book reviewed before we released it by a retired professor from the Holocaust Museum itself, from the Holocaust Museum in DC. So a lot of work went into it. We didn't want any arguments. We didn't want anybody to dispute what we had to say. And then my dad's own light on the world as he went through it, through good times and bad, of course.
Right. Well, I have a couple of questions about that partnership, though. It's, everybody listening right now, of course, has written a book or been working on a book. And a lot of the times people think that writing is a one-person process. It's just you and your pen or your typewriter or your computer. But it's really not. You do need that collaboration, just like you said. So I'm wondering, what was that collaboration like on a day-to-day basis? Was there any challenges with that? Any tips that you might, share to somebody else who's working with another person to write their book? What insights might you have on that?
Well, you got to have a good rapport. Janice and I had an excellent rapport. She's like a sister to me now, even though she's cross country, she's in Washington State, but she had a Michigan connection with me too. So she got her PhD at Michigan State, and anthropology was her specialty. She actually wrote about Madagascar, talk about a remote subject that not a lot of people know about. She also wrote a book about how to get a PhD. So she was a great book coach and just easy to work with. Fantastic writer, and she gave me advice about who to query to do book presentations and that kind of thing. So I'm still in touch with her. We didn't talk every day because I let her run with the project, and she's doing a lot of projects as well. So yeah, it takes a team. I mean, it's not inexpensive if you really want to get your book out there and distributed and done with a good quality. Book cover was another thing. Website is another thing. YouTube channel and all the socials. So I owe it to a nice team. I mean, a great team to work with. That's a process that takes a while. You learn by, there's no substitute for your experience. I always tell the younger kids, the residents, and it's true with writing too. You're going to make mistakes. You might waste some money, but eventually, if you stay with it, you can get funneled into the right people and in the right, and that's where we're at now. So great team. The guy, Mark, my friend, been with me on this journey the whole time, taught me about socials, and he started my website, and he's still working on my website, and I'm in touch with him frequently, a Massachusetts friend. The guy that did the book cover was from Croatia. Never met him, never talked to him. We did it all online, a lot of trust there. But for what he did, an amazing job with the book cover, and relatively inexpensive. And being from Croatia, it resonated with him that the story was about Hungary and the meaning of the story. So a lot of people helped, maybe for a little discount, although it was expensive overall, because they appreciated the message. They appreciated what we're trying to do in the fight against anti-Semitism. So Janice is she's top notch, top shelf. And if you've got a few extra shekels you need to spend on advertising or marketing or a co-author or beta read, whatever the case may be, use what you can. And that goes true in everything, medicine and sports and, God forbid, funerals, family crises. Get help. We like to be independent as radiologists, but you can't always do it. You need getting help is a good idea.
Yeah, thank you for that response. And I can see that it wasn't just, one person, that it was many different people in many different roles, from cover design to, all that. So it's great to know that you really do need people at your side, giving you that support, that feedback. And Robert, clearly it benefited you because the book came out so beautifully. And speaking of the book itself, then, I think we should segue a little bit into the content itself. I mean, I was looking through it, and it really does talk a lot about the transition from Nazi occupation to communist rule. So I'm wondering how that interplay worked in this book. I mean, how did it differ from their impact on the Hungarian Jews?
Well, out of the frying pan into the fire. I mean, the Russians, really, I mean, my dad was in forced labor camp, and he escaped twice. He had 4 escapes, like I said earlier, twice from forced labor camp. So he was a little removed from the Nazis in his hometown. And unfortunately for his parents, while he was away at the forced labor camp, they were taken to Auschwitz and perished there. His dad was a dentist too, so a real threat to society. He was also a captain on a Red Cross ship in World War I in the Black Sea, so real threat to society. My mom's grandfather, a rabbi, also perished at Auschwitz. But while my dad was away, and things got really ugly. There were laws against the Jews starting in 1938, where you couldn't own a radio, you had limited time to do the shopping, you were ostracized, you just weren't out, you were very isolated. So same thing with my dad at the forced labor camp. So they went through that and escaped twice, and then a lot of hiding and a lot of running until the war finally ended, and they were rescued by the Russians and Romanian renegades, which was interesting because Hungary and Romania have had their rivalry for many, many years as well. So the war is over, and it takes my dad months to get back to his hometown because it ended in Budapest, but it didn't end in his hometown, Jers, so it took him a while to get back. And then months after that to find out the whereabouts of his parents, which was another miracle. He ran into somebody from his hometown who told him what was going on with what happened to his parents. So yet another miracle. Dad is desperately wanting to get into medical school. They had quotas for that for the Jewish people. They were very short of doctors because so many people died in World War II. A lot of the Jewish people that survived, which weren't many, it was a small percentage, they were placed into factories and farms, even skilled laborers. I mean, they were assigned that. And the men that were the 5% of survivors, the 5% of men that were in the forced labor camp survived. And they were treated like POWs, even though they were never armed. So this is how the Soviets started with Hungary. Another point I like to bring up, it was the Americans, it was the West that won Hungary, that defeated the Nazis and the Hungarians in World War II, then we wouldn't be here either. I probably would have been raised in Hungary. And if I was lucky enough to get into medical school there, that would have been great. So it's different. So the Russians, they were not great to the Jewish people. You couldn't get married. You couldn't have Jewish weddings. They were very, I don't know why Christian weddings were allowed, but Jewish weddings weren't. So my mom and dad violated that law, and it got the sponsor, my mom's uncle, into a lot of trouble. The Soviets, torture, imprisonment, and unbelievable. So, and he wasn't the only one. They tried to get him to confess to the Raoul Wallenberg murder, so nobody actually knew what happened to him. Imre Nagy, who was the revolutionary during the Hungarian Revolution in 1956, he disappeared, never heard from again. So there was a lot of that. So they, short of corralling the Jewish people into town squares and hauling them off in trains to kill them at Auschwitz, The Russians really weren't that much better to the Jewish people. And even between World War I and the rise of fascism, they had the Horthy, who was an admiral in World War I. He was unkind, and they had the Red Terror and the White Terror, and you needed a program to keep up with who was in charge in the country, even between the wars. And the Jews always thought that it didn't matter who was in charge; they were always looked down upon as a lesser people. And that's in contradistinction to the end of the century, 1890s, big difference. Pre-war Europe was a big difference, very integrated into the society. But for Hungarians between World War I and even up to recently, very disappointing. How they never really got a break.
Yeah, it kind of seems like it was definitely one thing to another, and it must be very difficult because, although, the writing is very powerful in the book, it must have been really hard for you personally to go through all this and to learn about this too, and to know that this happened to your own family. And I'm sure that was a struggle in itself, right?
Yeah, that's such a great point. I mean, it's a great question, a great point. Yeah, when I read about my dad's parents, the grandparents I never met, who perished at 50 years old, I had to walk away from the book for a while. I took a week or 10 days off and just to digest and absorb what was happening. And then there's a lot of crying, of course. It's like doing my dad's eulogy every day. It's or honor thy father and thy mother. I mean, I'm doing that every day. So,
Right.
but I'm more apt to cry with joy when I hear good news, like I've been invited to an important book presentation. The bad news, I can, we're not interested, or they ghost you. Ghosting is a big part of this process too. I mean, it's just a fickle business. So I get a little angry, maybe take it a little personally, but for about 5 seconds. But yeah, it's a very emotional process. The story in itself, and asking myself why I didn't do this earlier. My mom would say with her Hungarian accent, "You couldn't do this while we were still alive." It's just that's my little joke too with the Jewish guilt. But at least I did it. I mean, it took a while, and it's a heartwarming, heartfelt project, and it's my legacy to my parents and to what they did. And yeah, it's got its ups and downs. It's definitely an emotional process.
Yeah, definitely. And, there's to anybody listening today, there's many people out there who are also writing about challenging topics, regardless of what it might be. But that's an amazing tip that you just offered us, that sometimes it's okay to take a break, to walk away, to gather your thoughts and your emotions before coming back into the project. And, that's what worked for you in order to get through it. And because you did that, we were able to deliver the message in such a powerful way. So definitely something that we could all take to heart, and know it's okay to take a little moment if we need to
Yeah,
process it.
and you don't have to have a quota of pages. Some people have this goal, 1,000 words a day or 10,000 words a day. Look, when I started out, I was doing a page, maybe 2 pages a day, and maybe skipping some days. And then as I rolled into it and got into the process, I really picked up the pace. So, and that's just me, but and I was moving down to Florida at the time, so I really wanted to get the first copy done before I shut everything down and the computers, and because you know how it is when you've got momentum and you've got your same little scenario, your place to sit, that's easier to move to. But once you've packed up and or changed computers or phones, you know how it is. It's you lose that momentum, and it's almost like starting over again. So there's no right or wrong way to do it. Some people procrastinate by starting another book or marketing another book. There's and that's not really procrastinating. They might start another project before they finish one. So I've heard that too. Some people start their book and they let it sit for years and then they go back to it. So there's no, and some people take 10 years to write a book or 15. It just depends who you are and whether you have family and you work part-time, full-time, all that stuff. There's a lot of factors to it.
Right, there definitely is. But again, it came out wonderfully, and it's something that a lot of people can learn from too. Because this book isn't just about, intimate family moments, but with a lot of, historical documentation in there too. So people not only are learning the facts, but get immersing themselves in this story and really seeing what the world was like too. How did you strike a balance between, weaving in the historical accuracy with your emotional storytelling? It must have been a little bit challenging to plot it out.
Yeah, it is. But like I said, the story was just so great. The 20 miracles in the book, 4 escapes. And yeah, it was like, oh my God, my dad was a badass. Forgive me, but he was. I mean, he was I knew that anyway. I mean, he was one of my childhood heroes. I went into medicine because he was. That's the punchline too, by the way. He became an OBGYN, delivered 10,000 babies in the Detroit area, and that's a redemption. It doesn't bring back the 6 million or his parents or the 50 million that actually died in World War II, but it is giving life into the world. And that's and he was jovial and jolly and no signs of PTSD, so you'd never know what he had been through. And that's and people who knew my dad just loved him, and so that's the heartwarming part about it too, is how they were lucky enough to survive but also not be traumatized by it. They got through it by educating people, and not everybody gets to do that. And we think about the people that didn't survive, how many great stories there might have been had they survived World War II, or the Russians, the communists. So imagine dying the day before the concentration camp is liberated, that kind of thing. I can't imagine that. You missed by a day or a week or whatever. Fortunately for my dad's parents, and it was horrible the way they died. And I can't even go into the trains now when I visit the Holocaust museums where I do presentations. I can't even go into the trains. I can barely look because I think of my dad's parents, and we've all seen Schindler's List. And that was a movie that was so interesting after writing. I saw it many years before I wrote the book, but watching it, it really resonates. I mean, it's Poland in 1941, but they do mention Hungary at the end of the war. And it's hard. And that's true for Hungary. They almost got away without having to get murdered, but they did accelerated genocide between 43 and mostly 1944 at unbelievable pace. So I guess by then the Nazi war machine was more efficient at carting off people, because they treated them like cattle, unfortunately. So it's hard to integrate that. These were our people. We talk about 9/11. People that deny the Holocaust, some deny 9/11, and I don't want to get off the subject, but 9/11 was American targets. It wasn't just Jewish targets. It was Muslims died, and African Americans and Asians and Jewish people too. So people that deny 9/11 in the Holocaust, you really need to get back to your history, and I think, and ultimately I want my book to be taught in the classroom, and hopefully it will over time. I just did my first book talk at a University of South Carolina, which was really a great experience, and hopefully more. People need to be educated about this kind of thing.
How was that book talk for the first experience? Did you find it rewarding? Did you get any certain feedback? Kind of curious. I'm sure it was very powerful for everybody who attended.
Well, I recommend, don't be closed-minded if you're an author and you're trying to market your book or spread your message. So book presentations are great. They're wonderful. It's the gold standard. It's a home run. That was my 37th, but my first at the university. Hopefully you get more. I'm in talks with Yale, one of my alma maters. It was a great experience. You always do a question. I introduce myself and I talk to the audience a little bit, and I ask them who's from where, and anybody a Holocaust survivor, and do you know any Holocaust survivors, this and that. And then I introduce myself, and I do about a 15-minute talk, and then we do a Q&A, and that's the most rewarding part, is that the Q&A after the talk, and very, very interesting questions. And then we do the book signing and even more questions, and it's just great to do those meet and greets. And a retired doctor was at the last one, which was really cool, a retired internist. I bring a letter, just sort of a query letter, to hand to people, like if you know somebody else that might be interested in having me do a presentation. And at least 2 people said, well, I've got a doctor's son who's in Colorado, and I've got a kid who's a historian or a librarian in Pennsylvania. And I say, well, please tell them about the book, and you hope to network that way too. So it's not just about doing the presentation at the time, but it's also about networking and spreading the word that way. But it's very gratifying to be able to do those. And you'll be nervous the first couple of times, there's no doubt about it, but the more you do them, the easier it gets, if you're focused on what you're doing, and a little rehearsal and a lot of emotion. You can't just talk as monotonous. I mean, I'm getting a little monotonous now because talking about the Sunday morning, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, you have to be lively. You've got to keep the attention of the audience, for sure.
Yeah, and these are some amazing tips for all authors out there too. A lot of people think you could just write your book and put it on the shelves and that's about it, but it's not the case. You need to keep promoting it and talking about it and spreading the word, because you just have to keep it alive, and people have to be aware of it so they can read it and enjoy it. So,
I love you saying that, because that's, you think, I say that all the time, is, it's not just writing it and handing it into a publisher and sitting back and collecting royalties. It's not like that at all. You've got to there's as much work or more after the book is released than actually the process of writing the book. There's no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of that, do you happen to have a copy of the book with you right now?
I do. May I show it?
Yes, please. Let's take a look.
All right. So this is another miracle. And thank you, Janice and the team. The Not a Real Enemy, the true story of a Hungarian Jewish man's fight for freedom. Some of these awards might be reflective, but the book has won 4 awards, and that's another miracle in itself. But it doesn't. I'm not the type for self-congratulations or patting myself in the back, but it is gratifying to know, and it's an honor to know that people that are in the know read this book and realized that it was a good quality book. This is what they do, and they understand the importance of the message too. So, but again, if it weren't for the team, 4 awards is just over the top. So, Not a Real Enemy: The True Story of a Hungarian Jewish Man's Fight for Freedom. If you Google Not a Real Enemy, you'll find it. Or if you Google my name, Robert J. Wolf, MD, you'll find me, and I'm on socials as well. So Yeah, fantastic book cover, and it's been a fantastic journey. It's just I can't say enough good things about the process, and everybody has a story in them too. It's another lesson. Everybody has a story. So if you're interested in sharing it, it doesn't have to be about the Holocaust. It could be personal trauma. It could be a journey through school, traveling, whatever, music, whatever the case may be. I highly recommend it and it keeps you sharp too. That's the other thing.
Yeah, it keeps you on your toes, right?
Absolutely.
So that being said, you did mention you had some social links. I was wondering, would you like to share that with us so we can check out some of your stuff?
Yeah, Rob Wolf on Meta, or Not a Real Enemy by Robert Wolf, Facebook author page. I'm also on X. I think it's at Robert J. Wolf, MD. Same thing with Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn, which is my favorite social media site. I think that's the most, for professionals like me and you, I think that's the best path. And that would probably be the last social media I would give up, would be the LinkedIn. But I'm sticking with them all right now. I'm newly on TikTok and Blue Sky. Not a lot of traction yet, but maybe someday. It's kind of fun if once you're posting about podcasts and presentations, that kind of thing. You have to engage with people too. So I've got robertjwolfmd.com is my website. And I have a YouTube channel, which is loaded with content. The website is also loaded with content, a lot of videos, television interviews, podcasts, other things like book presentations, and things related to the Hungarian Revolution and the Holocaust as well. So loaded stuff. But Robert J. Wolf, MD, you'll find me, or Not a Real Enemy. Please, enjoy the story, share it, and help me fight anti-Semitism, because I can't do it by myself. It's there's my little corner of doing it, but I'm trying to recruit the 99.9% of people that think like you and I, that are not into this violence and hostility and imprisonment and murder, and who want to raise families and travel and enjoy what little time we have on this good planet Earth, because it's not a lot.
That's really powerful to know. And so just by following you and checking out your stuff, you can stay up to date and, be a part of this movement. So today, go ahead and click the links. We're going to put them in the description box of this podcast so you can find out more. And this really is a powerful mission that you're on, Robert. So I do appreciate all the work that you're doing for it. That being said, I know this book can't possibly be the end. I'm wondering what else might you have on the horizon that we could be looking forward to. I know you're having the book talks, but anything else we could be on the lookout for?
Oh, well, I'm so busy with this, but I do have 3 other books in the back of my head. One would be part 2 of this, my dad's story, because we only get my parents to Vienna, Austria. That's where the book ends. If we went more, the book might have been longer. I mean, it's 400 pages, which is probably, I call it a medium-sized book. And I bring up the point, how do you put somebody's life into 400 pages, or 40,000 words? It's so difficult. But yeah, so that would be another book. And then the things they don't teach you in med school would be one that would be part autobiography, part humor, stories, and lessons, investing, partnership tracks, burnout, writing a book, med school, pre-med, residency, all that kind of thing. That could be a very fun book to do. I've had that in the back of my head for 10, 20 years. And then how to invest in a bear market would be I'm no Wall Street guy, but I've followed the markets and for 30 years, 35 years, an investor. And I guarantee I know more about stocks and investing and the markets than probably 95% of the population. So that could be a nice little book to do too. I don't know if I'm going to get to those right now. Even if I did all 4 books, I think this book would be by far the most important and the most relevant, at least for mankind, at least from my point of view. So the other ones would probably be a little bit more fun and maybe self-published. I don't know, but it's all in the back of my head. I'm so busy with this right now, though, so I'm sticking with this for now. It's my baby.
It is your baby, and that's what people don't realize is that when you do release a book, you do cherish it just like a child, maybe, and that's why you're raising it and continue to go to all those book talks too. But no, really cool ideas that you have with those other books as well, and I like the potentially continuing on their story and then also putting a funny twist on another book. So everybody listening today, it's a lot that you can stay up to date with and check out and know, because Robert is on a mission, and we should all join that, because it is a really powerful cause and it's still resonating today. So thank you so much for sharing all of this, Robert. I'm wondering if you happen to have any last bits of advice for the writers out there specifically.
Well, thank you, Danielle. Much appreciated. Again, change vectors. If you're bored, if you're a protester, for example, or you don't like your job, go part-time. Don't sit around and wallow in self-pity and don't complain. Change your vectors. change your path. And that's where if it's not writing a book, write a play, write an opera, go to the museum, travel, spend more time with your family, give back to the community, love thy neighbor. I mean, I don't want to sound corny, but it's true. Don't be bitter. Reach out to other people, reach out to other races and creeds, your neighbors, like I said. And religion never hurt. If you got a little religion in you, there's a lot of good advice. There's no substitute for experience. And what I learned about my dad, with the determination and integrity and hope and fear, that it strikes you how you feel that when you read the book. And that's and hopefully, if you are an author, you feel that same type of inspiration, whether it's a fiction or nonfiction, a third party story, that kind of thing. Hopefully your heart is in it. Don't do it because you have to do it. And also, if you think you're going to make a living writing, you're a small minority. I mean, you probably work in bulk as a co-author or whatever, and it does take time, and go with it. I think it's just it's a great thing to do. It's a feel-good type of thing. So there's a million other things we only had a little time here, but a million other things to share with authors. But that's kind of the gist of it, is sit down and do it and enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely enjoy it, get immersed in it, and find a mission that speaks to you too, just like you did, right, Robert? So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Lots of good stuff here. I really do appreciate you coming on. And if you are interested in learning more about Robert and his story, everybody here, go ahead again, check out the links, check out his book talks, all of that, because the story does not end here. There's much more out there to discover. So yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. And to our listeners, I encourage you again to pick up the book. You'll discover the book is not just a window to the tragic historical period, but timeless lessons about human resilience, the price of freedom, and the power of bearing witness. So again, here at Authors on Mission, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories and strategies of authors who are making a difference with their work. Our mission is to empower you with the knowledge and confidence to become an expert in your own field, just as Robert's mission is to shine light on a time in history and, from his own family and world history as well. So again, thank you for listening. And until next time, keep reading, keep learning, and keep pursuing your own mission with passion and purpose. Robert, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you again. Much appreciated. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.
This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.